Jeff.
Sarah, two questions. One, do you have a reaction to Steve Bannon's comments on 60 Minutes saying that the firing of James Comey was the biggest political mistake in modern history? And secondly, if you could look forward to tomorrow a little bit at the President's meeting with the Malaysian Prime Minister, what do you expect to achieve during that meeting, and will the President address or avoid the issue of the U.S. investigation into him?
Yeah, pretty wide-ranging topic, so I'll try to make sure I cover first on the Comey firing. I think that we've been pretty clear what our position is, and certainly I think that that has been shown in the days that followed that the President was right in firing Director Comey. Since Director's firing, we've learned new information about his conduct that only provided further justification for that firing, including giving false testimony, leaking privileged information to journalists. He went outside of the chain of command and politicized an investigation into a presidential candidate. I think the President's been very clear about his position on that front. He's very pleased with the new director and has full confidence in him to fully restore and lead the FBI. In terms of Malaysia and on that question, hard transition, but I'll try to make sure we cover that. The United States and Malaysia have had a 60-year relationship and partnership built on common economic and security interests, and that continues, and the President looks forward to discussing a wide variety and wide range of regional and security issues with the Prime Minister, and talking about ways that they can strengthen counterterrorism cooperation, certainly the halt of ISIS, addressing North Korea and their continued actions, and making sure that we promote maritime security in the South China Sea. Those are certainly, I think, some of the priorities of tomorrow's meeting, but I'm not going to get ahead much further than that on any conversation that may take place. Look, we're not going to comment on an ongoing investigation being led by the Department of Justice, and that investigation is apolitical and certainly independent of anything taking place tomorrow. Matthew.
Thanks, Sarah. I also have a question on Mr. Bannon's interview. During that, he said, I think Mitch McConnell and to a degree Paul Ryan, they do not want Donald Trump's populist, economic, nationalist agenda to be implemented. It's very obvious. It's as obvious as night follows day. First of all, does the President agree with that obvious characterization of McConnell and Ryan?
The President's committed to working with Congress to get some big things done. We've got a very big agenda. The President wants to work with all members of Congress. Obviously, that includes Republican leadership as well as Democrats. I think you saw some of the President's leadership last week when he helped strike a deal to make sure that we got the funding that was necessary. We're focused on moving things forward, and certainly that's the goal and the priority of the administration.
So on that note, would he like to see, given his past criticisms of Mr. McConnell and Ryan, would he like to see different leadership in the Republican Congress?
Look, right now the President is committed to working with the leadership we have, and nothing beyond that at this point. Jonathan?
Sir, just to follow up on Bannon's comments, he actually he said all that about McConnell and Ryan, but also said that they wanted to nullify the 2016 election results. So just a simple yes or no question, does the President agree with that assessment?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't had that conversation with him, Jonathan.
Is he still talking to Steve Bannon? Does he still seek his counsel on the outside?
I know they've had one conversation, but I don't think anything beyond that since he left. John Decker.
On Steve Bannon.
Popular topic.
Keep it going. Yeah, it's a good topic. Do the President have
I think we may be answering more questions on Steve Bannon now that he's not here than when he was, but go ahead.
You might think about that. Did the President happen to watch the interview? Any reaction? Did you happen to watch the interview on 60 Minutes?
I'm not sure if he saw it in its entirety. I know he has seen clips of it, but I don't know that he watched the entire thing. I did watch parts of it.
What was your reaction to it? As a former colleague of yours who worked here at the White House, were you disappointed with any of his comments? Were you surprised by any of his comments? Did you like the fact that a former staffer is speaking so openly about some of the inner workings of what happens here at the White House on a regular basis?
I'm sure it made for great TV, and I'm sure CBS will be happy to put those ratings out. As for me, I'm here to speak on behalf of the administration. Francesca?
Why ruin a good thing, Sarah? Keep on.
Is that what this is, a good thing?
Staying on the topic of Steve Bannon, another comment he made was that dreamers should consider self-deporting when their work permits run out. Is that something that the White House thinks is realistic, that the Dreamers would voluntarily leave the country when those work permits run out? And is that something the president thinks that they should do?
The administration's been clear what our position is. We're hoping that Congress will step up and do their job and fix this problem and implement responsible immigration reform, and addressing that problem would be part of it.
Realistic that they would leave.
Last week, Nancy Pelosi told reporters the president would sign the DREAM Act. Is that accurate? Would the president sign the DREAM Act?
Again, the president and the administration are looking at responsible immigration reform, and part of that would be part of that process, but we want to do something that addresses a multitude of issues. And again, Congress has 6 months to do their job. We're very hopeful and confident that they will.
In his 60 Minutes interview, Steve Bannon said that this discussion over DACA could lead to a civil war in the Republican Party. How and why is he wrong about that?
I think that Steve always likes to speak in kind of the most extreme measures. I'm not sure that I agree with that. John?
On a different topic.
Oh, wow.
In recent weeks.
Maybe you get 2 questions then.
In just a matter of weeks, 2 storms that have been categorized as once in 500 years or even longer, major events have hit the United States. In light of that, has the president given any thought to reviewing his decision to leave the Paris Climate Accords?
I'm not sure specifically on the Paris climate deal, but as he said at the time, the goal is to always do our very best when it comes to taking care of the environment and taking proper steps. The United States is one of the best in the world at doing this. We want to continue to do that. But right now, the administration is focused on the recovery and relief efforts. And as Tom said a few minutes ago, we'll look at that analysis once we get through the coming days and focus on the recovery and relief and saving life effort taking place. Hallie?
2 questions. To follow up on John's question a little bit here, and since you said you do speak for the administration, can you clarify whether the president believes human activity contributes to climate change?
The president's addressed this already.
I'm asking you to address if that's changed given these storms.
I don't think that it's changed over the last several weeks, and again, he's addressed his opinion on that several times
So my
since.
second question is actually on something that happened back on August 10th, as you know, which is the president declaring that he wanted to have a national emergency when it came to the opioid crisis. It has now been more than a month since he said that. That's a delay for a president who likes to do things quickly, as he has often said. Is the president taking this seriously enough, and when does he intend to declare this emergency and actually get the ball rolling on that?
Absolutely taking it very seriously. The commission and members of the administration have continued to meet and work on the details of that national declaration, and that's certainly a big priority for the administration, and we'll continue to focus on pushing that through.
What's taking so long? We know this is a president who likes to snap his fingers
It's a
and do
much
things.
more involved process, and that's something that they're working through on the legal side, the administrative side, and making sure that it's done correctly.
Ask about Steve Mnuchin.
Tricky, Bender.
He and Cohen are going up to the Senate tomorrow to talk to the Budget Committee. What do they want that budget resolution to look like, and does the administration support the House budget?
Look, I don't want to get ahead of their conversations, and I'll let Secretary Mnuchin, I think, plans to address that in further detail tomorrow. John?
I want to Steve Mnuchin real quickly. He took some criticism last week from Republicans for his handling of the debt deal. What does the president think of Secretary Mnuchin's performance so far?
The president has confidence in Secretary Mnuchin and is glad that he is part of the effort working with Gary Cohn to get tax reform done this year.
Just to drill down a little bit on what you said a moment ago regarding James Comey, you said that he was responsible for giving false testimony. Do you believe that Comey either perjured himself before Congress or at the very least misled Congress in his testimony?
I think that's something probably for DOJ to look at, not me. I'm not an attorney. Jen?
2 questions, one on the Equifax leak and one on tax reform. If a big tax reform bill doesn't pass by December, would the president support adding middle-class tax cuts to the end of the year tax extender bill that Congress has to pass?
We're focused on making sure we get a complete tax reform package. That's the goal.
He would support?
Right now, that's the focus, and if that doesn't happen, we'll look at other options at that point.
Americans' personal data security after the Equifax leak, is more regulation warranted for the handling of Americans' personal data?
I think this is something we have to look into extensively. Tom Bossert will be one of the primary people taking the lead on that front, and certainly something we have to explore all the best ways to make sure that Americans are protected in that sense.
Thank you. Was the president disappointed by Steve Bannon's comments on 60 Minutes?
I'm not sure if he was disappointed in comments.
And separately, did Steve Bannon warn the president that firing James Comey would be the biggest political mistake in modern history?
I'm not aware that conversation ever took place. As I mentioned when we started, the governor of Florida has a press conference that'll be starting here in a few minutes. We make sure everyone has the opportunity to tune in. The press team will be here, and we're happy to answer any questions, particularly if you have anything beyond Steve Bannon. We'll be even more than happy to answer. Thanks, guys.
Tim Scott meeting Wednesday.